Oh, guys, it is so hot in my office today. I'm like sweating. So if I get progressively redder over the course of this video, that's why. Also, look, I got my nails this done. I'm shaking it up. I had to get something shiny. Let's talk about the universe. Hi, I'm Emily. If you are new here, welcome to my channel. If you are not new here, also welcome to my channel. Don't know why I separated that. I'm a professional psychic activator, historical channel, basically historical medium, author. I do book stuff. There's lots of stuff that I do. There's many a thing. My guides gave me a term for it. Oh, I wrote it down. My guides gave me like a tagline the other night when I was like falling asleep, and I like jotted it down, but I don't know where I put it. Stay tuned to future videos because I might have a tagline that actually encompasses all that I do. Today we're talking about the universe. Genuinely, that is what we were talking about. I have talked a lot about my channeling about the universe, but I've never made a video where I compile kind of almost everything together as far as how the universe flows, how I see the universe, how I interact with the universe, like I am doing in this video. So I'm going to do my best to make it as simple as possible, and I'm going to try not make this super duper duper long, but I have channeled on this specific topic for many years. How the universe works is kind of a passion to me. Most of my psychic abilities and my, spiritual awakening actually kind of come and stem from this question, because I was confused, annoyed, and a recovering Catholic, and I wanted to know the fuck was going on. And so a lot of my channeling was partly to answer this question. So I have really dialed in. Most of the stuff I'm going to be telling you in this video are things I have been told from multiple beings throughout the universe, or that I have seen in astral travel or astral projection, that I have been like downloaded and then like repeatedly verified, those sorts of things. So that's like the most verifiable, if I can even call it that, because again, this is just kind of channeling verified information that I can possibly provide to you about how the universe works. And when I mean how the universe works, I'm literally talking kind of about like universal structure. I'm not necessarily talking about how we can interact and work with the universe. I can do another video on that if you would like me to do more of like, hey, ways to work with the universe and have the universe work in your benefit. I can totally do a separate video on that. That's not so much what I'm talking about. I'm more talking about structurally, what is it that we're living in? How exactly does it work in the simplest way that I can? And I do have to mention, my patrons voted for this video, and I want to shout out and give thanks to my Intuitive Initiate patrons: Alexandria, Alyssa, Carrie, Cheryl, Danny, Danielle, Kristen, Meg, and Sarah. Thank you all so much to my Intuitive Initiates. If you guys want to know more about my Patreon, if you have questions about this episode that you'd really like to get my opinion on, the Patreon's a great place to go. I have a whole bunch of tiers in there. One of them is a psychic mentorship tier, that Intuitive Initiate tier. It is for psychic mentorship. You get calls with me. I have meditation stuff in my Patreon, like monthly activations, monthly card pulls, discussion posts, book lists, vote on content like this video, all sorts of fun stuff is all located there. If you could please like, comment on this video, subscribe to my channel, hit the little call button. It just really helps it in here, and I really appreciate it so much. It means the world to me. This channel is growing at a really lovely rate, and I'm really honored to get to do this and get to talk in these longer form videos. I'm super passionate about it. So if you could like, subscribe, and follow along on this journey, if any of this resonates with you, that would be fantastic. Also, I am going to be looking down at my notes quite a bit, not because I'm like reading anything off, but because I really need to organize how I'm going to present this information, because it's a lot, and I'm going to try to do it in the most digestible and simple way possible. So I wanted to make sure that I had like a nice flow going. So if you see me glance off, I'm just looking at my notes to like make sure I'm getting everything and hitting everything right for you guys, so that I can make it as clear and understandable as possible. I mean, that might go without saying, but I just want to address that because I don't want you to be like, what the fuck is she reading? That's what I'm reading. So as I mentioned, I'm going to make this as simple as possible. One way that I'm doing that is I'm going to start big and kind of break that down smaller for us. So start with kind of big overarching concepts and kind of narrow it down towards kind of us and our role in all of this big thing. Of course, there's going to be that's not a hard and fast rule, but I'm just going to try to make that as simple as possible. And I'm going to use as many analogies as I can while I do that, because I think analogies are really helpful when we're visualizing something as massive as the entirety of the universe. That kind of helps to have something to actually picture that's not just a bunch of stars out there. it really helps. Some of them you might have heard me touch on before if you followed other content, but I'm going to go way more in depth with this video than I usually do. This is just based off of my channeling. This is based off of, again, like I said, the most provable stuff that I've got for you. That doesn't mean that you have to completely agree with everything I say. You can have your own opinion. You can have your own view. You can channel in your own information. You can dive into it. This is just as much as I can give you based on my extensive 10 plus years of experience trying to work and figure this out. By all means, I encourage you to learn more. Look at other resources. I love spirit science for a resource. If you really want to learn more about how the universe works, that's a great one that goes way more in depth than this video is going to go. There's tons of stuff out there. Look at quantum physics. Look at all this different stuff out there that whatever it is that feels aligned with you, if you want to dive further into this, this is just my version and my way of explaining it. Hopefully it resonates with you. Hopefully it gives you some stuff to think about. That's the goal here. We all have our own journeys. Maybe we perceive the same things differently. Maybe they're totally different things that we're both looking at. There's a million possibilities. Nothing's impossible. I just want to put that out there as a disclaimer. Also, as I go through things, there's probably still going to be things that are confusing. Sorry, doing my best. You can do your best to throw your questions in the comments if you have them. Some of them might be a longer answer than I can just type in there, but I'll do my best to answer the best that I can. If you need me to do more of a series on this, I can do that. We'll see how this goes. The first thing I want to say about the way that the universe works is I need you right now to absolutely forget any moral binaries. Good versus evil, light versus dark, all of that, entirely human stuff. That is not how the universe is not a good versus evil thing. It's an everything, everywhere, all at once type of thing. If you haven't seen that movie, it's fantastic. But that's genuinely it. It's everything, everywhere, all at once. Everything is a combination of multiple things. This whole idea that there couldn't even be a binary, a black and white, it doesn't exist. So as I describe these things to you, I don't want you to be like, oh, that's where the good stuff is and that's where the evil stuff is. That's some limiting beliefs that I want you to work yourself out of, because that is inherently not what I'm discussing. That's not what I'm talking about. We're not talking good versus evil, whatever. This is just talking about energies and the way that energies present. So if you're finding yourself slipping into that moral binary, remember what one of my spirit guides once yelled at me, which is, the universe does not operate off of your idea of morality, Emily. And I was like, shit, all right. Keep that phrase in mind as we dive into this. To start this off, I want you to picture the universe as a cake. A very many-tiered cake. Think about the tallest wedding cake you've ever seen. It has many, 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 many tiers. And on those tiers live different energy beings per se. So the very top of the cake, the very pinnacle of all of the energy that encompasses the universe, is creator energy, universe energy, if you want to refer to it as that, God energy, like big G God, whatever you want to call it, it is the creator of all that is energy, source energy. That is the top tier of the cake. Now it's important to note, though that is the top tier, it doesn't mean that energy doesn't filter through all of the other tiers, right? So we're talking some gravity energy there, but that's where the God, creator, universe energy exists, is on the top of the cake. Our Earth is kind of in the bottom half. Earth is in like the bottom half of this many-tiered cake. So we got some separation going on between us. But just to give you an idea, it's like, okay, we're talking from here down, I will get to here. And then even below that as well, as I kind of talk through this. And I want you to think that the tiers are kind of separated by vibration level. Now, when I say vibration level, I'm not talking about like the popularized, like, oh, good vibes, bad vibes, because I feel like that's gotten really new agey, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about the actual rate in which things vibrate, which can determine basically our states of matter, our states of being, our understanding of the universe, etc. So think of it more as, the more informed a being is, the higher up on the tier of the cake it is. The more that a being knows about the universe and understands the state of actual reality, that remembers everything, etc., the higher up they are on the tiers of the cake. So if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense for us being down here in kind of the lower half, because how much do you remember about all of your incarnations before this one? How much do you remember about your higher self and exactly what your higher self does at any given time? Probably not a lot. And if you do remember it, you're kind of a fluke, and there's other things you don't remember and don't understand, don't know about the universe. So we're, as a rule, kind of down here, where the more informed stuff goes up from there, which again, of course, reaching creator energy at the top. So if we have that creator energy at the top, remember that at the core of it, we are all this. We are all that creator universe energy. Creator universe made the freaking cake, right? Creator of all that is made the cake, which is what I'm basically going to call that tier for all intents and purposes right now. That is who built the cake. That is who we all stem from. They are the creator of all that is. They are the energy of ultimate love. Whatever you want to call it, that is where it all comes from. We are it. It is us. That is it. Now, if you want to look up more about how we are simply the universe experiencing itself, by all means, feel free, dive into that rabbit hole. I'm not going into that rabbit hole, but there's a lot of resources there to support you. So from that tier, when we start to come down the tiers, that's where we get interdimensional beings, who we consider to be deities in this particular life space. Our higher selves live in these tiers following down. Now, no, they're not on the same tier, but they're kind of in the next, couple tiers coming down from that higher up one. That's where kind of the soul energy of different beings of the universe kind of resides as a rule of thumb. If we're talking about that soul energy, right, that, like I said, is our higher selves, that's where we kind of hang out from. So you're wondering, like, okay, so then how does the higher self, how do we have a piece of ourselves down here on the cake? Well, basically, when a soul incarnates, a little chunk of this higher self comes down and is a soul for that person's incarnation on whatever layer of the cake, or that being's incarnation on whatever layer of the cake that it is. So we're taking little chunks from our higher self. So when we're talking past lives, if you ever read a past life reading, or if you heard me talk about past lives, whatever it is, or if you have whatever exposure you have to past lives, it's the past lives of this particular little chunk of your soul that is experiencing those past lives. Not necessarily all of them you'll channel in will be on the same layer of the cake. They might go up or down. You might see some of that, but it's like this little chunk of the soul's journey. That is where past life stuff kind of comes in. That is why people also will say, and you may have heard this before, but we can have multiple chunks incarnated at the same time on the same layer of the cake. Like you can have two little groom figures walking around doing stuff on this particular layer of the cake. That is totally fine. You might even meet a part of your soul, genuinely. It's just not the current soul you've got, because it's also coming from your higher self. So the higher self is higher up on the cake because the higher self knows the sum of all of its parts, which we do not know the sum of all of our parts in this particular incarnation. Again, the more informed, the more up the cake you kind of go. Also, just as kind of a vague rule that I have found out, most of our guides hang out in this kind of upper-ish tiers as well. They are varied though. It's not like all of them are on tier 3. Like that's not it. But in the, couple tiers that are down from the top, that is kind of where our guides hang out and interact with us. That's kind of where we draw them from and communicate with them from. That doesn't mean they always show up like the beings that they look like in their higher self form, but a lot of their soul energy kind of comes in from there. That being said, all guides are different. If you want more information about guides, I did do a video on it. I will put that here. All guides are different. All situations are different, but they do tend to hang out in kind of these higher-ish tiers of the cake. Now, as we move further down, the more physical the incarnations get on this cake, right? So the more we get to us, which is we're living a pretty dense physical experience. That is not the case up in the kind of higher tiers. As we're moving down more towards the middle, that's where we get some like very physical incarnations when we start talking about, life on other planets, extra dimensional beings in that kind of sense of like having physical incarnations in those spaces. That tends to be higher up on the cake than us, but lower down from where we'd visualize like our higher selves, guides, even extra dimensional beings, that kind of thing. Because their incarnations are not as physical as ours are. They are not beings, often, at least from my channeling, that require things like eating regularly or water regularly to maintain their physical vessels. It's a lot easier to bend the rules of physics to their will. They do not have to work at everything. The vibration is essentially higher, so they can work with energy easier, and they tend to know more, and also those lifetimes tend to be considerably longer. Obviously, it varies based on what, planet, space, etc. they're incarnated in, but that is kind of how those tend to work, even though they are a physical incarnation. Hopefully that makes sense. I know there's a lot in that space. You probably have a lot of questions in that space, but just for the sake of time and for the sake of this video, think about them like that, okay? And now we're getting closer to Earth, right? We're coming down the cake, getting closer to Earth. The tier right above Earth, right? So we're on kind of the lower half. We're not at the bottom. We're not at the bottom in the slightest. We're not on the bottom. Sometimes I know it feels like we're at the bottom. We're not, I promise. But the tier right above us is kind of where we tend to consider where people go when they pass, right? Where people go when they pass, when they enter into a spiritual spa day. And if you want a whole other video on what happens to us when we die, let me know. But when we enter into what I call a spiritual spa day, where we kind of cope with the fact that we just were a person, that is kind of the tier right above the earth tier, is where physical body is kind of gone, but I'm still kind of coping with earth stuff, still intimately connected to earth stuff, intimately connected to physical incarnation. And as we cope with that, we kind of go back up the layers of the cake. We interact with our higher self. We kind of reconnect with everything, and kind of things expand from there. But that is kind of like a shorter tier that's kind of like right above the earth tier. Now let's talk about the earth tier. This middle way, kind of lower half of the cake, sort of closer to the midline. Let's talk about the earth tier and our physical incarnations here, and how that kind of works. The first thing I want to say about earth and our tier, we are not as important as we think we are, and also we are as important as we think we are. It is a both and situation. I have heard it said in a lot of new age circles, this notion of just like, we're here to learn things, we're here to expand the flow of the planet. Maybe we are. I don't think so. I don't think our only purpose here is to learn things. I think that we have many purposes here, just in any other layer of the cake. If you were to incarnate into any space on the cake, you would have multiple purposes. I think that the universe is way too complicated to try to distill Earth's purpose into like a learning center. I think that is really ignoring a significant amount of nuance that is required to understand what it is to have consciousness and to exist in the universe, period. So just to think about that, kind of decenter yourself while also understanding everything literally is creation energy. There are no rules. You can do whatever you want energetically. I'm not saying go break the law. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm just saying that things aren't necessarily impossible that you might think that are impossible. So yes, we're as important as is everything in the universe is as important. There is no hierarchy of importance. But we're also not as important as we think we are, because I think that there's a very deep centricism. Of course, it's our planet, right? We don't have contact with any other planets on paper. So like, of course, there's like an Earth-centric viewpoint that we have that I just like want to shed for you just a little bit as we talk about this tier. Usually I have a fun little drink for these, but I couldn't find one. I didn't want to make coffee, and they didn't have any juice, and I didn't want to make tea because I just had tea a little bit ago, and it's too freaking hot in here for me to have tea. So we're going with the fun little drink that is water in my at-home water bottle. This water bottle never leaves the house. Now, you may have heard me talk about, or other people talking about, how Earth's vibration is actually rising. It is actually rising, which means we're kind of starting to feel this like lifting, going up the cake layers sort of feeling, where things are kind of blending more. There's more activation happening. More spiritual activity is around. And there is just like a blending of the layers that's kind of occurring. We're kind of moving up vibrationally. So we're moving up the layers of the cake a little bit. And this is something I need to say. All of these layers, with the exception of kind of the topmost ones, are very fluid. They're they're custard cake. We're talking like a cake made of custard. You can move through the different custard layers. Like inside, you can actually move up and down on this cake. Whoa! As different beings and energies and places fluctuate in vibration, fluctuate in that sort of thing, there is some fluidity to our space. So like I say, Earth's vibration is actively rising. There was a time when it freaking sunk super duper duper low down, and we were lower on the cake than we are now. We're coming back up. So whenever someone talks about that, of like, oh, Earth's vibe is going, or when people talk about like going to like 5D, which is not something I necessarily super am aligned with, like the concepts around that, but often that's at a simple way. That's kind of what they're talking about. It's like, hey, let's move the whole planet up a tier, up 2 tiers on the cake. Let's make things more magical, more connective, more energy focused as opposed to physicality focused. Let's release some stuff. Let's live longer lives, because that's also kind of part of this. Like the more dense the matter, lives tend to be shorter. That's not the rule for every tier of the cake, but they tend to be shorter. And just kind of more challenging in general, because again, physicality stuff. So that as we move up, the kind of lifespan stuff does absolutely expand. It is worth noting that people do pass on other tiers above us and below us. It is, I say people, but beings do pass on other tiers above us and below us. It is not just here where death is a thing. Death is a thing. It just is a thing, even on some of the higher up tiers. Also, just a side note on that, part of the reason Earth is kind of low is our planet is young, genuinely. It's not a super old planet, our energy system is what I really actually consider our planet. Our energy system is just a younger energy system. It's still really rooted in physicality. And I'm not saying that transcendence is the goal, because it's not. I don't think that's the goal of this planet either. I don't think that's the goal of this experience we're having either. I'm just saying as we learn and grow more inherently, vibration stuff changes. And we haven't been doing this for all that long in this particular realm, on this particular layer of the cake. Our higher selves haven't been sending little soul incarnations here for all that long, prospectively, to the timeline of the universe. So cut yourself some slack. You're on a young planet. You're figuring stuff out. You're a pioneer. Go you. Also sorry. So below us, as I have mentioned, there are even denser tiers. And this is actually harder for people to visualize and to understand. Even I, when I've channeled into these spaces, it's kind of challenging to channel in and understand, because we don't have a lot of concept on this layer of the cake, it being a higher up layer of the cake, how to process or understand a more physical reality below us. So if this is hard for you to conceptualize, I know it is. It is harder to conceptualize more physicality than we already have. The way I like to kind of think about it, you know how atoms never really touch together in science? Well, think about if they did kind of touch together and bunch together, the weight of that, because we don't have that. So just that, like, that is not a super good visual of like what it looks like there, because I can't even really conceptualize it, other than just like the knowledge of its existence. But it's a really good way to think about it, of like, oh, the closer and closer atoms and matter like touching, that is what we're getting into, where our atoms don't. So obviously I'm not trying to say that like our reality doesn't have the same scientific limitations. It's different. Okay. It's different, but that's like the best I got. I do know though that there's a lot of what we would consider like unhealed energy, a lot less fulfilling experience, stuff like that in those lower tiers. You've probably had past lives there in a higher self capacity, but it's harder for us to conceptualize right now in this incarnation. Now that we have the pretty little visual that I've just described, right? Our many layered cake, I'm about to confuse you even more. I want you to take that cake and turn it sideways. So like the circles are pointing you, right? So you see it and you're looking at it. It's just like a flat 2D rings and rings and rings of circles, right? The smaller and the medium and the medium and then, right? And going out. And so like the bottom tier is, it's not bigger, but you get what I'm saying right now. Okay. So there's like circles compressed into a 2D image. And now take that 2D image and make it a Venn diagram where there's circles, a whole, like take it, duplicate it, cross those things over. That's how dimensions work. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. That's how dimensions work. So there's actually duplicates of our cake, or not duplicates identically, but like if you think about it, there's a whole bunch of cakes surrounding our cake, overlapping with our cake, almost to infinity, but overlapping with our cake in a Venn diagram style. That is how dimensions work. And that goes for like time and space dimensions. That goes for my shifting community friends, shifting dimensions. That's kind of what you're doing. That also goes for dimensions that kind of intersect with ours. I call these ones our next door realms. So we're talking things like the fairies, the dragons, the demons, the giants, the half human stuff, which I always hate calling them that because I'm not trying to be insulting to them in any way, but like half human, like mermaids and things like that. Those sort of think all the creatures in mythology, they interact with us via this Venn diagram. Now, there was a time in Earth's history, like I mentioned, where the vibration of Earth was higher, and so it was easier for us to interact with these next door realms, with these other dimensions. This is glitch in the matrix stuff, guys. This is what we're talking about. So it's important to note, as you move up the tiers of the cake, Creator doesn't have another tier. Okay, so it's more like, all right, if our cake is like this, it like fans out towards the bottom, right? So like Creator, universe, energy, and then things fan out as far as dimensions go. So the top couple tiers don't have a super, like a lot of Venn diagram energy, but it expands as we kind of go down the cake to have more dimensions out in those directions. I know that's kind of confusing, but hopefully you followed me on that one. Those who are higher up in those tiers, the different souls, the different energies and stuff higher up in those tiers, have a lot easier time interacting with all of the other stuff because, again, kind of closer to Creator energy, has more fluidity, so moving between dimensions, realms, etc. is a lot easier. We can still do it. We can still do it here on this tier, but it's easier the higher up the being is. So if you think of like the topish layers, as far as like looking at our Venn diagrams, those are kind of like merged together and then it kind of expands outward. Also, the higher up on the cake a being is, the easier it is for them to interact with all of the dimensions of the cake. Us being like the lower bottom half, we can interact with some, but it's not as concrete as we'd like. We have to work at it. It's more challenging, where beings up here can interact with everything, and they don't have to do it nearly as much. It's not as hard for them. They can understand more. They understand how to navigate it more. For us, it's harder to go down to the layers, but think about those in the bottom layers. They are basically just interacting with themselves until, they pass, and then they kind of go back up. For kind of that scope, keep that in mind. Now, I want to say, when I first dove into this stuff and I heard a lot of the new age, like, oh, our vibration's going up, we're moving towards 5D. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, right. I did study a lot about the precession of the equinox. So if you want to look that up, that is something that's really interesting to look at. But part of the reason I know myself that we are moving up in vibration, we are moving up the layers of the cake here in this like earthly realm, is because we are starting to see more and more spiritual interaction. We're starting to see more ghost sightings, more alien sightings. People are starting to understand energy work. Things like Mercury retrograde are now part of our natural vernacular. A lot of people talk about that. Things are actively changing based on our technology and our understanding of the universe, and we're incorporating these ideas in. Also, there's a lot of revolutionary energy happening on our planet at this time, which is a huge indicator that our vibration is going up, because we are demanding more. We are wanting more. We are actually not just settling for what we are given, and that is just genuinely raising the energy of the planet up as well. So that is where a lot of my validity of that statement kind of comes in. And if you've noticed, especially over the last couple months, from when I'm posting this video, there is a lot of activated energy happening. Lots of sightings, lots of people glitching the matrixing stuff. You probably have gotten a ton of synchronicities from your guides. That's not something that's going to feel new forever. It's going to keep being that way. We're not going from like, oh, it's now around Halloween, the veil is thin and then it gets thicker. Less of that. It's more like thin and thin and thin. Our Venn diagram circles are crossing over more and more and more and more, because we're moving up on the layers of the cake, which, right? It's like a pyramid. We get it, okay? That is kind of the gist of what I want to try to explain as far as this video goes about how the universe works. I know there's a lot of information. Hopefully you're able to follow it all. If you didn't, don't be hard on yourself. It's a lot of info. Like I said, I've spent years kind of studying and looking at this. Maybe in a different video, we'll go into time and also more on the dimensional space, because that is a whole other bucket of worms that we can tap into. If you wanna be brave, because there's a lot there. But maybe we can do something like that. But as far as like a basic understanding of the universe and how it functions, there it is. If I could give you a takeaway from this video, that takeaway would be, you are made of creator energy. You are everything. Everything is everything. So don't limit yourself. Don't think that things are out of your reach. You can absolutely do more than you ever give yourself credit for, and healing is in your grasp. And at the end of the day, having fun is always going to be the best way to help you find the next thing that you want to be doing. Of course, responsibly in all those things. My guides are like, you should probably disclaimer that. I'm disclaiming it with, like, obviously I'm not telling you to go break laws and be awful to everyone else. I don't harm others in your pursuit of fun, but just follow your enjoyment, follow your inspiration, follow your play, and that's always going to be the best for you. As always, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. If you could, again, like, subscribe, ding dong bell, comment, let me know your thoughts about this video. It's fun to make. It was really fun to write out the notes for this video and like put it all into an organized document. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that. And I hope that this genuinely helped you. And don't forget, you're magical as fuck. Have an amazing day. Bye.